Yesterday, the team at Kunos and 505 Games dropped a couple of pretty juicy announcements regarding the future of Assetto Corsa Competizione. First of all, the game will be coming to Xbox One and PS4 in June, putting to bed months of speculation on the subject. And on top of that, we can expect to see a pair of new DLC packs later this year, featuring GT4 cars and content focused on the British GT Championship. So today we're taking a look at what these announcements might mean and engaging in some healthy, educated guesswork about the content itself. Hello fellow sim racers. Back in February 2018, Kunos announced that they'd acquired the license from SRO to produce a game focusing on the Blancpain GT series. My YouTube channel was barely a month old at the time, but I made a similar video to this one looking at what that might entail. And like the proverbial broken clock, I got some important details right. Most notably that the GT4 series and British GT would make for a couple of very nice self-contained DLC packs. So I guess rampant YouTube wishlisting does work out in the end. Sometimes. Let's start by taking a look at the car side of things because, let's be honest, for most of us that's the big headline item. This press release was doing the rounds yesterday, which, alongside the PS4 and Xbox announcement, casually mentions that 10 plus new GT4 cars will be coming to the sim later in the year, alongside a British GT pack. Now, this doesn't mention specifically the GT4 European Championship by name, but I think it's a safe bet that this is what it will represent. Firstly, it's probably the largest GT4 series that's promoted by SRO, with whom Kunos hold the license agreement for the content in ACC. Secondly, it's also the main support series for GT World Challenge Europe, which is the new for 2020 name for the Blancpain GT series. So obviously that means that all of the circuits are already in game, and the general structure of the championship and everything else is already in place. On top of that, the cars that run in this series fill the gaps needed for the GT4 contingent of the British GT field quite nicely, but more about that later. SRO does run a couple of other GT4 series in France, Asia and the USA, but there's much less synergy with the rest of the content that's currently available. Though, and I must say that this is total speculation, I really wouldn't be surprised to see some of the Asian content in the future, thanks to ACC's growing popularity in that region. Again, total speculation on my part. What the pack doesn't mean is Nordschleife, despite all of the hopeless optimism I've been seeing in the comments. Yep, sure, GT4 cars race there, but not under the SRO banner. So I'm still sticking by my prediction that we won't be seeing the green hell in ACC unless something drastic changes with the way the license works. Right now, it'd be very much like Le Mans turning up in Codemasters F1 2020. Honestly, I'd love to see it, and this is one of those situations where I'd really love to be wrong. So, back to GT4 cars, and specifically, what could we expect to see in the pack? Well, this is where it gets a little bit messy. With the 2020 season looking like it's going to be heavily disrupted by travel bans and quarantine measures, who knows what 2020 will look like for motorsport. So let's take a look at the 2019 season as a starting point. Conveniently, there were 10 cars across that season. The ever-popular versions of Audi's R8, Aston Martin's Vantage and the Mercedes AMG GT were joined by the likes of the KTM Crossbow, Alpine A110, BMW M4, the Ginetta G55, Maserati GT, McLaren 570S and the Porsche Cayman, and of course my personal favourite, the absolutely apocalyptic sounding Chevrolet Camaro GT4. Not a bad haul. But you'll note that Kunos' press release mentions 10 plus cars, and not just 10, which brings us nicely onto the British GT pack. I'll talk about this specifically in a moment, but it's prudent to mention that the field in 2019 included a Mustang GT4 and a Jaguar F-Type GT4. So, from my back of an envelope calculations, that makes 12 cars. I guess time will tell. The British GT pack is a little bit simpler to unpick. The series is of course multi-class, with the familiar GT3 machinery competing alongside GT4s that I've just been talking about. And of course, 3 of the 6 circuits that the championship frequents are already represented in ACC, so presumably these will be reskinned to fit the British GT Championship, alongside any other tweaks that are needed to make it work in the multi-class series. Joining Silverstone, Brands Hatch and the sunny Bristolian suburb of Spa-Francorchamps will be Donington Park, Alton Park and Snetterton. These are challenging circuits in fast GT cars and represent a really nice change from some of the more spacious venues that are already in ACC. On top of that, we can of course expect another raft of new liveries. While I could make some reasonably educated guesses about the content in the 2 DLC packs, the PlayStation and Xbox announcements are tough to tackle with any degree of certainty at all. All we know for sure right now is the release date is June the 23rd. And of course there are some very big questions, most notably being what, if any, restrictions there'll be on the game compared to its PC counterpart. The console version of Assetto Corsa enforced smaller grid sizes for performance reasons, with 16 cars being the maximum if I recall correctly, and this seems to be a fairly common theme across other console racing titles. While this is by no means a certainty, it does raise questions, and it's hard to imagine the now late in their cycle consoles handling an 82 car field at Spa all that comfortably. I'd love to be proven wrong on this though. Next up is cross-platform multiplayer compatibility, something that many developers are striving towards and something that I'd really love to see, though again the performance limitations of the long-in-the-tooth hardware may play a role here as well. Whatever the case, it's great to see ACC heading to the Microsoft and Sony platforms. Many thought that it wasn't possible, but with new racing content for consoles being a bit thin on the ground lately, it can only be a good thing. Moreover, I have a personal stake in this. The PS4 release of Assetto Corsa in 2016 was what dragged me back into sim racing after a few years away. Sure, I jumped ship to a PC a few weeks after that, but that had more to do with the vibrant modding scene than anything else. Console players are an important part of the sim racing scene, and it's great to see them getting a chance to get their hands on what I feel is very much the most important racing sim at the moment. So that's all of the big stuff, but the press release also mentions that version 1.4 of ACC, coming in April, will feature improvements to the UI, multiplayer modes and more customization for cars and drivers, as well as a new car showroom. All very nice things indeed, but perhaps a little overshadowed by the big ticket items. Whatever the case, it's nice to see continued improvements in lots of areas from Kunos, and that seems like a very nice place to wrap things up. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, it would be great if you could hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you can see more content like this in the future. So all that's left to say is goodbye, thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.